Hi, this is the Social Gelo with Angelo show. My name's Angelo. I'm a social scientist, surfer, martial artist, and a whole lot of other things. Coming to you live from Kasai City, Japan, the Social Gelo with Angelo show.
What's up? And welcome to another episode of Social Gelo with Angelo Podcast. Today I'm here with GGM Carlos Bunda and SGM Rick Kingi. This podcast is titled, Who Brought Kajukenbo First to the United States? If you don't know what Kajukenbo is, you can fast forward to the end of this, and there's a What is Kajukenbo podcast where we talk about what Kajukenbo is. I have an interview with John Hackleman, UFC coach John Hackleman, Chuck Liddell's coach, and his connection to that. At the end of this podcast, you can check that out. If you've already been on the show before and you know what you're looking at, let's get this show on the road. So, first question is, well, how and who brought Kajukenbo to the United States? I don't know. So that's why I always bring experts.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at
it was John Leone. So I'll tell you the story how I connected with John Leone. I first started my karate training in 1957 under Ed Parker. And a lot of people ask me, why Ed Parker? Because he was the only guy around, He was either Ed Parker or Oshima Shotokan. There were no other schools in California. That was it, in Southern California anyway. One day when we were training in Southern California, Ed Parker told us he was going to go to the airport to pick somebody up. See, a friend of his called, he said, go pick up my black belt. He's going to California. And so, fine, that was Saturday. And he went to the airport. He came back about, 3-4 hours later. We were still messing around. And it was John Leone. He picked up John Leone at the airport. Emperor called him, said, go pick him up. I said, oh, where's the guy? He said, he's sleeping in a station wagon. It was a long flight for him because those days it took 9 hours to come to California from Hawaii. My first time I came to California, I took a flight. It was propped, 2-engine prop plane. It took 9 hours to come to California. And anyway, John was sleeping in the back, and later on he came out and he watched the train messing around, All he did was smile, and then he went back. He went back to go sleep because he was tired. Anyway, fast forward, and I've been with Ed Parker for about 6 months then. And I was at Ed Parker School because all the people in his school at that time, I would say half of it came from Hawaii. A close-knit bunch that came in from Hawaii. We all knew each other because we all came from the same area. One of the guys that brought me in, and I knew from the beginning, was James Brown. We're from the same high school, but James Brown is 4 years older than me. And you probably heard about James Brown. He's very influential in the style that you learned.
Yeah.
But, so he and I were good friends, and we knew everybody that began their martial arts career in LA area. I know everybody in LA that started in Kajukenbo. So whenever somebody asks me, you know this guy, that guy in Kajukenbo, I go, no, I don't, because I never saw him, because he had to be starting with us in 1958. Well, anyway, going back to the story, a few weeks later, I was at a party where all my friends from that area went to, and there was John Leone. He was at the party also. He knew one of the guys that was living there, and he goes, "Hey, I recognize you. I want to show you something." So okay, fine. He put up a sheet in the wall, and he had this projector and an old 8mm film. And he started projecting it on the wall. And it showed him teaching his students, and they were doing things under the banyan tree at Moana Loa Park in Honolulu. It was about 20, maybe 25 guys, But he had them all lined up. They were doing pinions. I never saw a pinion in my life because Ed Parker had no forms when we were training. It was all techniques. And I said, wow, pinions 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They were just doing it. Then they were doing self-defense techniques, almost the same as Ed Parker's, but they were all Kempo. You'll see the relationship later. And then 2-man attack, 3-man attack. I said, wow, this is cool, man. So he comes up, then he tells me, what do you think? I said, wow, it's awesome. He goes, hey, come join my class. They give you purple belt. And I'm going, no, no, that's okay. But actually, no, it wasn't purple, it was blue belt. And then he goes, and I'm going, to me, the way I explained it, typical Filipino, they try to bribe you to get you. So anyway, I joined his school because his school was only 3 blocks away from my house where I lived in LA, right off Sunset Boulevard. So he had a school on Sunset, and we started training. There was like 8 of us there, and
was a shirtless selfie of me by the dumbbells.
what he did at the Honolulu Park, I knew almost what was going on, because here's the part that every time somebody asked me, how do you know it was real? My first wife was in the class, in that class. And she trained in the John Leone in 1957 while she was a sophomore in high school. And that's something. Anyway, so now we trained together for about 58, 59. That's when I met Tony Ramos. You know who Tony Ramos is, right? He's one of the 5 pioneers. Well, I was at a bowling alley, and this is where all the people from Hawaii would hang out and bowl, because bowling was a thing those days. So I'm over there, and this guy comes up to me. He goes, hey, you Peanuts? Not to me. I said, what the hell? That was my nickname, by the way, Peanuts. I said, yeah. He goes, you training with John Leone, huh? I said, yeah. I said, how did he know? Somebody must have told him. The guys that know me. He goes, where you guys at? And I told him. When you guys train? And I told him. The following week, we're training, and guess what comes out to the front door? Tony Ramos. He's watching us train, And he's just sitting there with his hands crossed, typical Kempo style, hide the right knuckle, because it was black. He's like this, he's watching us. He was there about maybe 10 minutes, and he left. And John never acknowledged him. John saw him standing at the door, He came and he just watched it and he left. The next time I was in the bowling alley, here comes Tony Ramos. He sees me. He comes up toward me and he grabs me like this and he shakes me and he goes, hey, why don't you tell me your last name was Bunda? I said, why? He goes, me and your brother, we're good friends. We're like family. And they were. They came from the same town. They just lived about less than a mile away, And ever since then, well, I told Tony, said, you never asked me. So yeah, I didn't know anyway. I said, by the way, why did you come? He said, because I was there to go check you guys out, because we heard John Leone was making so much money, he never sent any back to Hawaii. There was only 8 of us training on a cement floor. John wasn't making a lot of money, and he only charged $12.50. And that's how I met Tony Ramos. And Tony and I became good friends after that because of my brother's ties with him. Because if you live in Hawaii, in Wahiawa, the town of Wahiawa, if you didn't know my brother, you didn't live in Wahiawa. My brother was kind of famous. He was a scratch golfer, top baseball player, top basketball player, ROTC teacher. Here's a good trivia thing. My brother was a coach and manager of this baseball team. They beat the New York Yankees, Yogi Berra All-Stars, in Honolulu Stadium. Yogi Berra was so impressed with him that they took 3 of his team to join the Yankees. One of them became a pitcher who pitched the perfect game in 1956. The World Series, Don Larson. There you go. That's good trivia. Anyway, then we started training, and then next thing you know, 1962, John opened up another school. He moved to North Hollywood. And he said to me, hey, I have another school in LA. He says, go teach for me. So I don't have time to go back and forth. I'm going, what do you mean you open up another school in LA? He opened up a school and he partnered with Tony Ramos and George Tokomoto on Venice. This is where Kajukenbo people were helping each other. So he said, yeah, teach with me 3 nights a week to start off, because the other 2 nights, this guy, George Tokomoto, is going to teach there also. And we're going to share red. And I said, okay. And John, so I went out to teach. And my first student, believe it or not, was the guy, Kingi, and his 2 brothers. They came in, this guy came in and said, I want you to teach my 3 sons, Anyway, that's how it started. And at that time, I was only a brown belt in 62. In fact, well, John didn't have any black belts, until I became a black belt in 64, actually. Took a while. But that's how it all started. And I think, how many guys we ended up, Rick, in that school?
Shoot, probably at least a dozen.
Yeah. And I ran them to the ground, man, because I only knew one way to teach the way I learned, It was hard.
Yep.
And in fact, that's the way I still teach. I retired already, but Rick never forgot, and Rick teaches the same way, hard, tough. In fact, I think he took it to another level because I pushed him. And sometimes I think it's too harsh,
It's Kajukenbo.
The way they go, man, you're gonna break a bone, You see it in Kajukenbo, you get your black belt and everybody punches them, right? I cringe every time I see it because, John Leonard used to do that when he was promoting students. And because of his strength and because he was learning Kung Fu, he did actually, it wasn't a punch, it was backhand slap to the gut. He entered the guy's inside. He didn't know his strength. And that's when he told me, don't hit anymore. And I kind of understand that. But so if I do hit, it's a love tap. Not this guy here, Rick. I mean, this guy don't look like they're going to break him, man. Jeez.
We tried to. People were more afraid of getting hit at the end of the test than the test itself.
Yep. But that's how it started. And there's more to it. But if you want to ask me some questions, go ahead.
Yeah, one of my questions I have, and I have another question for Rick right after this one. But what you said you originally started with Ed Parker, and I've asked this question to people before, but since you actually trained with Ed Parker, this is a lot of Kempo practitioners do watch this podcast, and I just did one on Chow. That's the last episode. This one's coming out right after the Chow episode, if you follow the podcast. And one of the questions I asked, even back then, I've asked a few people, but you can answer this for me. What would you say is the difference between Ed Parker Kempo and Kajukenbo?
Not much.
I think it's maybe just the forms.
Basically, almost the same. The difference is the forms,
Yeah.
because Ed Parker never had any forms, And looking back, because what I know now and then, when Ed Parker, his forms were nothing but techniques put together. If you had a grab art, that was part of his form. Because the first time we saw Ed Parker forms, I looked at Rick. Was it you, Rick? And I said, that looked like technique number 1 and 2 put together to make a form. Because his forms, his techniques was melded and became a form. It wasn't a form like, I'm not 100% sure, but where people put it together like the way Emperor did. He just made it up on his own and wrote it down, and that's their forms. So when you watch Ed Parker's original forms, it looked like self-defense techniques put together. And but as far as how they trained and the techniques, they're so similar because they both learned from the same guy, Emperor took it to another level, bringing in the other 4 guys, trying to mix it up. But originally, it was Kempo, Kempo karate. It wasn't Kajukenbo. That's why it's so familiar and so similar.
And when you say the same guy, we're talking about Chow, William Chow, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And then for anyone who's wondering about what this conversation is all about, the previous episode I did before that explains who William Chow is. So Rick, why? How? So you walked in with your two sons. You decided I'm going to start training with this guy. How did this? How? What made you want to start training in martial arts, and how did you end up walking into to Bunda's dojo? Like how did that happen? Because I'm sure you saw it maybe from the street. What how did this? And back then, it's not like there was a big martial arts boom per se at that time period. It's not like it is now. So what attracted you aside to do this rather than something like, I don't know, back then probably boxing is probably the go-to back then was boxing. What what attracted you to Kajukenbo and how did you end up in that school?
Yeah. Well, I did do some boxing also, but back in the 60s, early 60s, 61, 59, street fighting was common. But when you got into a fight with somebody then, the next day you guys were best friends. So a lot of things had to do with your ability to fight. That's what it was. Well, my older brother just happened to be walking by and saw the school. And he looked at it, saw it, and he came back to us, so we need to go try this out because it was realistic type of fighting, where you could really actually hit somebody and wouldn't get in trouble for it. So we joined the school, and that's basically how we got there, just because my brother found it. My father took us down there, paid for it. I think he only paid for 2 or 3 lessons.
Yeah, he did. 2 or 3.
But we enjoyed it, and I, along with my two brothers, brought about 5 other people with us. So it was just a hard workout every night, and then afterwards we would beat the hell out of each other, and it was just fun. We could carry that on to, we went to parties and stuff like that. We didn't go out looking for fights, but we were always prepared, because I think one of the things that it really made you do is it made you get over the fear of fighting, get over the fear of being hit, is what I practice at my school right now. I tell the parents, I say, look, once your child gets over the fear of being hit, once he gets over the fear of fighting, he's not intimidated by anybody. And he's able to look at somebody and just walk away and say, hey, whatever, it don't bother me. Their grades improved. Parents come in, and I love when parents come in, they say, my son stands up in classroom and he participates in activities. He's a leader in his class. So I think that's what really attracted us to it, is the fact that you would sweat, you would burn, then you would fight each other. Really fight each other. Sometimes Carlos would turn the lights off, and we'd fight in the classroom with no lights, just the street lights are on the outside. And trust me, we used to bust each other up. We'd come out of there with swollen fingers, busted lips all the time. But it was all about love and learning. And then always the best part of Kajukenbo back in those days were talking stories afterwards. And I think that's one of the best parts. When I was going with Carlos and we go out to John Leone's, I love hearing him, Dave Kawashima, and Leone talk about things that they did coming up. So talking those stories afterwards, it really made things real nice.
And what part of, and I forgot, I should have said this first, I always do this. What part of California was this in? I think you briefly mentioned it, but what part of California were we talking about?
It was in LA. It was on Venice and 4th Avenue, which is called like Midtown LA. Okay. So and that's right in the middle of LA. Hollywood is to the left, Inglewood is to the right, Watts is to the far right, Hollywood is to the far left from where the school was. So it was right in the middle of everything.
So I like that first quote. You can hit someone and not get in trouble for it.
That's right.
I'm gonna make a meme. Why you start to
that's right.
You can hit someone and not get in trouble for it.
And then still be friends afterwards. Even just we would just talk. Like I said, there was at least 6 of us, or if not more, would come down to my buddy Richard Katayama's father's 62 Ford station wagon, and we would come down to class. And I don't know if there's some things I could say, but I shouldn't say it unless I get Carlos's permission about what he used to do when he used to put us in a horse stance with our eyes closed.
You can say it. It's no problem.
Okay. So we come up from the 60s. In the 60s, people smoked weed. Well, we would come to the class, change clothes, get out on the floor, sweat, and then we would be in a horse stance with our eyes closed for half an hour at least, screaming, our legs burning, everything. And we would leave class, and on the way home, a guy would reach in his pocket and say, I thought I had a joint. I don't know what happened to it. And this went on and on and on. And then one day we looked outside, we saw Carlos sitting in the back of his little Mustang in the back seat with his sunglasses on at nighttime playing his ukulele. And I think it was a little bit lit. That was the fun stuff about Kajukenbo back then.
So now we've covered like John Leoning was the first person to bring Kajukenbo to the United States. Now, Carlos, you're seeing the school grow. It's growing. How did it go from a small program and then start spreading out the way it did? How did that transit? What did that transition look like?
Well, we when we left John Leoning, well, remember I said I met Tony Ramos in 59. The reason why we had a school, Tony Ramos also was teaching on First Avenue, but he only taught for about 6 months, Rick, not too long. Then he moved to Fairfield up north. And then after he was there, then Alejo Reyes showed up. And then Halbuna showed up. And then Gaylord showed up. So all four of them up Northern California. John Leoning was the only one in Southern California. We were in our own little world, and those four up there, they were doing their own thing, And because we were the only Kajukenbo school in Southern California, certain things happened where there was a Shotokan school in LA, downtown LA, and they were established. And they used to have their exhibition tournament every Nisei week. And I used to go there with James A. Brown to watch them fight, but it was Shotokan style fighting. And this was like 61, 62, 60. And one year we got invited. And I was the only guy in a black gi in the all Shotokan tournament. I had no idea what to expect. 1963, I still remember that.
Yep.
And then in the audience was Ed Parker.
I think Ak Wong was there too, wasn't he?
Oh, yeah. They all were there.
Yeah.
And I got lucky, and I fought the best fighter they had, and I beat him. And don't tell me how, but I beat him. Only because I was scared shitless, man. The guy was big and all that, but he just kept attacking me like a one way only, straight. And because of the basic training I had from John Leone, we had 40-40 sidestep and all that good stuff. Man, he went by me, boom. I said, what the hell? This guy, man, he wanted no control. I said, you want to play that game? Fine. I kicked him with a double kick, full force, TI, stance perfect. And I was the only guy that scored full point in the whole tournament. In the old days, it's Ippon or Wazari, half point, full point. Nobody had scored a full point. I was the only one. And because I beat this guy, everybody started looking at me now, And in the audience was Ed Parker. Well, the next year, 1964, was their first internationals. And don't forget now, there were no tournaments from 1958 until 1963 that we were involved in. No tournaments. The only tournaments we had was we fought each other. And the only way we practiced the technique was the scenario had to be, what if we were walking down the street, we get into a fight, we meet another guy that knows karate? So that's how we train. But the training was a little different. There wasn't a point where you're going to hit me, I'm going to hit you back to hurt you. So it's a little different. So when I got into my first tournament, actual point tournament, it was like sparring with white belts. Because I was looking for something to hit, and if you came close to me, I'm going to hit you. But I got to learn the game, but that's what it was after a while. But in the early days, how it spread, one of the guys left early, and he wanted to start his own school. And John said, fine. He wasn't going to hold you back. And that person went out and opened up his own school. He did quite well, and his school was about 2 miles away from where John was. He didn't leave North Hollywood, but he was really successful. And he taught the way he learned. He put his own flavor into it, and he did quite well, you know. One of his famous students was Benny the Jet Urquidez. Oh, not too bad, huh? And another guy that left the school early, much early than Bill. He went into the Hispanic community, and from there it just went crazy. I mean, I think there were like 6 schools that came out from this one guy, but you could see the difference in the way they were teaching and the way the students did their training, because it was not exactly the same what John Leone taught. You know, even this other guy that left, his name is Bill Rosaki, by the way, that left, and he taught the way he learned, but he didn't learn all the forms. That's the only difference. He didn't learn all the forms, but all the self-defense techniques, the method of teaching. And to me, the most critical thing that John Lennon taught us is spirit. Forget forms, forget techniques, it's the spirit. John taught us, you go out there, you just kick ass. That's the key to Kajukenbo. To me, anyway. And that's what I taught Rick, and Rick teaches to his son. That's why, and Rick never went away from that philosophy of training. You just go in there and you're better than the guy and you're going to kick ass. And that it comes up, it shows up when you do your sparring and do your fights, because they're all cocky, you know. That's the key, right, Rick?
Yep.
You're not afraid. You hit me, fine. You hit, but you got to put me down, you know. That to me is the Kajukenbo spirit. But anyway, that's how it started. But California was its own little group, because everything you hear about Kajukenbo is up north, because there was 4 of them up there. And we were kind of secluded, huh, Rick? We were on our own.
Yeah, we were. We're the only ones.
But you know what? I like to brag about this. I took Rick and his students, I took them up north to go compete. After the first tournament, everybody was afraid of Southern California. He and his students, they were kicking ass, man.
Always.
Sure. Tell them the story about when you went to Hawaii with your students.
Yeah, 2000, we took 7 out of the 8 black belt divisions, and I asked Joe. I said, "Hey, Joe, George Katanana." I said, "Give me your 5 best black belts. Inglewood challenged the state of Hawaii." And we wore them out.
Couldn't get it, you know. He couldn't get any volunteers to go fight Rick's team.
Yeah, it took him a long time to find 5 people. You know, and without getting off the subject, I know you have a lot of people talking about Kajukenbo. You have a lot of historians talking about Kajukenbo, but understanding that Carlos is 85 years old, and he visually seen. He's not doing research. He's the guy that saw all this stuff. Parker, like I said, he came from Hawaii, and he studied Kajukenbo for a short time with Joe. And if you look at Great Grandmaster Gary Forback's tapes, there's when Joe was talking, he talks about Ed Parker. He talks about Chow also. But Carlos is the person that physically was there, saw it all from the beginning. I mean, you know, like I say, he's 85. I'm 78, and I've seen a lot, but he's seen all of it. He's labeled as great grandmaster. One of the reasons he's great grandmaster, he has 8 grandmasters under him. We talked about grandmaster titles on your show before, but Carlos has 8 grandmasters. Two of us are seniors that he physically trained from white all the way through their black. He has 5 professors that are under him that he physically trained. Not people that he picked up and joined up, but these are people that he contributed to with his time. And that's why he's a great grandmaster. Now, the KSDI offered me a great grandmaster. I said no, because I have a great grandmaster. and that's that's Carlos Bunda. So I remember we talked about titles on that one, but he, like I said, he physically was there, participated, and everything. So
Yeah,
you get a lot of truth.
I don't know if you know this, but I was inducted into the Black Belt Magazine Hall of Fame 2024 as a pioneer. And I said to George, I said, why me? I had no idea this was going to happen. But anyway, I was a pioneer. Then I thought about it for a while, and I was a pioneer. When the first internationals came out, I was the only guy in Kajukenbo that actually won. I was the first lightweight black belt champion, and that was Kajukenbo. The second year I competed in '65, that's the year I beat Chuck Norris. I lost to another Kajukenbo guy, and he kind of caught me by surprise. I'm going to go over this real quick. The following year in 1966, I met the guy again, and I cleaned him out in less than a minute. So I became champion again. But anyway, I was always the first, so kind of like reputation was following me around, And in the 4 years that I competed in internationals, I took first place, fourth place, first place, third place. And the last time in '67 that I competed, I lost to Steve Sanders, and he and I are good friends. But because of that, the reputation, big deal. To me, I didn't think it was a big deal, but I was the first. That's why I got the Pioneer Award, I think. I'm not sure. I wasn't too sure why Black Belt Magazine gave it to me, but I'll accept it. It was a good honor anyway. But there's some things that I cannot tell you because it's not. It's because people come up to me and he says, "Oh, you want to hear a good story now?" I'm sitting in my classes over in my school. And this guy was sitting there watching me train, teaching people. This was my West Covina school. Anyway, everybody left, and he stayed back, and he started talking to me, and he goes, I also teach Kajukenbo. I said, oh, terrific. Where at? He told me, I said, oh, wow. He goes, but your form is not exactly correct. I said, what are you talking about? He goes, I want you guys to do this form. He said, we don't do it that way. I said, oh. Who did you learn it from? Your style. And he tells me, he gives me the name. I said, oh. This is I opened up my desk, and I pull out a picture and I showed it to him. I says, this guy here is your instructor? The guy that was sitting, kneeling down was his instructor, and we're standing on the top. There's 4 black belts and the purple belts below us. This is who he learned from. I said, you think I have the wrong form? Did you learn from this guy? Oh, was he pissed? I think he came back about 3 weeks later. He told me he took his belt and he threw it at the guy. He says, you've been lying to me all this time. And he started his own style. And I had another guy come up to me and tell me, I'm going to go under this guy. In those days, I don't know why people have to go be under somebody. What do you have to be under somebody? You're black, but you can do your own thing. And I said, oh, and he gave me a name. And I said, no, you don't want to do that. Tell me why. And I explained to him. And I said, this is where you should go. And he goes, really? I said, yeah. I said, next time you see the guy, just tell him, I can't go under you. I'm going to go with somebody else. And I guarantee you, he will not challenge you. The guy didn't challenge him. And I'll tell you who it is after we're off camera.
All right. Well, what I think is interesting, I recently read Chuck Norris's book, and he mentions in his book, in his autobiography, he never says the style. He never names the person, but he says he lost to a strong Hawaiian fighter in a tournament. And now I think I figured out who that fighter is.
No doubt.
And he never mentions the name. He says that after he lost, it really inspired him to start cross training and innovating his art because he did what is it I think it's
Tang
Tang
Sudo.
Sudo. He did Tang Sudo from Korea. So he was talking about how he started integrating more Kempo after he lost to this strong Hawaiian fighter, and he never mentions the name. And at first I thought it was Aldo Costos, but yeah, it was Carlos Bunda. That's awesome. So
Yeah, I beat him twice.
twice. So
Second time, even though I beat him, they didn't recognize it because he was kicking like crazy, right? And I was escaping his kicks. And one time he spun around, I went up and I grabbed him in the back and had him down and I tapped on the top of the head. To me, that's a point. I don't have to kill him, right? The judge said, no point. I said, what? Fine. And then he fell backwards on the rope and his leg came up about this far from me. He got the point. And let me tell you, it was fixed, man. I know it was fixed. The first two guys to, because I met him in the finals, the first two guys to meet him, one guy nicked his cheek. There was Victor Young. And the other guy hit him here on the other cheek. That was Roland. All three of them were Kajukenbo. All three of us.
So yeah, it was Kajukenbo. I had a strong suspicion it was Kajukenbo when he was saying Hawaiian fighters. He kept saying Hawaiian Kempo fighters in his book, and I was like, that sounds like Kajukenbo. It sounds like Kajukenbo.
So he started, he started learning, and I think the first guy to take him on the side was Demura, and from then on, man, he became strong. He's the real deal. There's nothing phony about Chuck Norris.
Nope.
He's real.
One more question. Well, I have a lot of questions, but I don't want to keep you here all day. Benny the Jet Utriquez's teacher, you mentioned real quick, and it was kind of like it was in the middle of a few other guys how it was growing. One more time. So Benny the Jet Utriquez's teacher, what was his name again?
Bill Ryosaki.
And he came from
John Leone.
John Leone school. So you were, and at that point he was. I mean, I'm going to use Japanese terms here. So you were his senpai. You were. He was a student of John Leone at the school that you were running with him at the time. Is that what was happening?
Yeah. This is how it goes. When Bill Ryosaki, like I said, he's like 3 years older than me. When he graduated from high school, he went to the University of Hawaii. And while he was there, he trained for a few months with Marino Tiwanek at CHA3. And then he moved to California. But when he moved to California, Marino Tiwanek said, go see this guy, because I know him. You can continue your training. And that guy was Ed Parker. There was no Kajukenbo yet. So when I started training with Ed Parker, Bill Ryosaki was there. So we knew each other from Bill Ryosaki school. And then when I went from Parker's to John Leone, so did Bill Ryosaki. And that's what we trained the same school together. We from beginning to the end. But Bill left a little early, and John didn't stop him because John said, "Fine, anybody can do what they want." But because Bill wanted to, I guess he wanted to make a living and teach because his father was a teacher in I think it was Hilo. And that's why he named the school Ryosaki in honor of his father. So he named his school Ryo Dojo. And then he joined the service and he became an actor. He did a lot of things. The last time I saw him was in 2016, I think, at the Ho'olaule'a in Gardena. And he told me that he was informed that he couldn't use the term Kajukenbo as his style. This is going off the track, but you'll see the correlation here. I said, what are you talking about? Style is not Kajukenbo. Because they told me my style has to be Hawaiian Kempo. And I couldn't figure it out, so I started asking around. Why? It came down to money and recognition and jealousy. That's what it was. So when I met one of his students, third generation at a Kajukenbo tournament. And they told me they were there to find out if they could be recognized as Kajukenbo. I said, yeah, why not? I'm Chi. So last year at the KSDI tournament in Las Vegas, I had Miru Osaki formally recognized as a Kajukenbo instructor. And this was in front of everybody. And nobody can say anything because what are you going to say? I'm lying? Why would I lie? Gee. I mean, he had more Kajukenbo in his left hand than a lot of the guys out there teaching Kajukenbo, you know? But
even with John Leoning, we were called the North American Kung Fu Karate Association.
yeah, for the longest time.
Yeah.
Oh, that's another story. You're going to like this one. Our school name was NAKKA, North American Kung Fu Karate Association. And for longer, like 7 years. And the reason is because he and Emperor wasn't seeing eye to eye, you know.
Okay.
Money.
And it changed. It changed in 1968. In 1968, I was part of a team, an all-star team that was sponsored by Elvis Presley that Ed Parker put together. And we went to Hawaii and we did exhibitions. And then we had an exhibition tournament style with the people in Hawaii. But anyway, the first night we were at the HIC arena, or I forgot where it was. I think it was the HIC arena. And we did a little exhibition, and then he was introducing all the 12 guys that he had brought over from California. Actually, it came all over from all over the United States. Yeah, it was in the team with Mike Stone, Chuck Norris, Steve Sanders. I can't name all. Thomas La Puppet. You know, all the top fighters. I was included last minute. Anyway, when he was introducing people on his team, he would introduce, Mike Stone as whatever the form was, Chuck Norris, Tang Sudo. Then when he came to me, Carlos Bunda, Kung Fu. I went, no. I went, excuse me. And looked at me and go, what? He goes, my style is Kajukenbo. And you know why I did that? I saw Emperor on the front row. And I have to acknowledge what my style was. I was Kung Fu. In fact, they had a magazine article on me. You know, they used to call me Chop Suey Kung Fu, never Kajukenbo. And anyway, that evening after it was over, I was in the dressing room and this guy walks in. Hey, wait, this guy Bunda. Was the Emperor looking for me? First words out of his mouth, who you teacher? I said, John Leone. Oh, and I said, John talks about you all the time. From that day on, Cedro and I became good friends. Cedro must have called John, said, you can call yourself Kajukenbo now because our pants changed to Kajukenbo that year. How you like that for history?
I like that a lot. It answers a lot of the questions that I've had that I've tried to figure out for a while now, and I had a lot of conspiracy theories at this point, but now I finally got it all cleared up. Well, I don't want to take up. Like I said, I could do this all day, but I know you have things to do, and I don't want to take up that much more of your time. If you have time in the future, I'd love to have you come back on and ask you another 1,000 questions because I have many. But for today's interview, I think I'm going to stop here. And for those of you who watched, thank you for watching. Before we go, though, is there any message that you want to put out there to the Kempo Kajukenbo community? I'm going to give I'll let you both say whatever you want to say to the communities. Go ahead, Rick.
There's no real message. Just carry on what Cedro asked us to do. I kind of hate seeing the stripes in the KSDI arena right now, but I support the Emperor family from Hawaii and the ones that are here in Las Vegas and Seattle, whatever it is. So I'm Kajukenbo 100%. Always will be. Never deny it. My students are Kajukenbo. Kempo people, if you came from Ed Parker, you're part of our family. Like I said, the biggest difference is that Kempo, we have basically the same self-defense techniques. but we have different forms completely. Each pioneer, when they left Hawaii, had the same forms, but everybody modified them and changed them a little bit. So when people say, who is the original? I say, well, we all are. So I love Kajukenbo, I love what I do, and I'm going to continue to do it. I got my generation, I have my son's generation, and I know I'm going to have my grandson's generation. So I'm looking at my legacy as really solid. And think about this too, before you turn me off, is there's not many people that can say that they are with their instructors since 1962 until today of 2025.
I'd like to say I don't know. Hopefully, I don't offend anybody. I've interviewed about over 100 people. I think you're the first. And if one of the guys comes out and says I was the first, then I'll retract that. But so far, to my knowledge, you're the first.
And I've never wavered off from him. He's said it was easier for him to teach me Kajukenbo than was golf. We golf on Fridays together. Yep. Anytime I have black belt tests, I invite him down. That's it. I'm very fortunate to have him as a teacher, and his demeanor that you see right now, laid back and nice and cool, has always been that way, even the way he taught.
Yeah. Oh, I gotta tell you one more thing, just a minute or two, about Rick. When Rick first started his own school 40 years ago, 40 something years ago, called me up because I'm going to open up my school. I said, well, fine, do what you want to do. So he did, and he called me about a year later again. He goes, I'm going to have a promotion, Rick. You don't mind if I say this, but I don't mind telling the story. It's true. And I think it changed him. I know it changed him. Because Rick was a fighter. He was a fighter. So when he opened up his school, of course, all his students were going to be fighters, right? So when he called me up about a year later, he goes, I'm going to have purple belt promotions. Come down and judge them. I said, fine. I came down and I watched them do their thing, right? And they were fighters. I mean, they were tough. But then I said, stop. I cannot, in good conscience, promote you guys, even though you guys are good fighters, because sometimes you guys look too sloppy. You're not paying attention to the basics. Perfect basics. And I said, but it's not your fault. It's his fault. And I pointed to Rick. Because Rick wanted these guys to fight. I mean, and I'm a stickler to basics. That's the key that John Leone taught me. And if I be damned, I'm going to do the same thing. It's going to be that way. So I'm a stickler for basics. Footwork. Your legs got to be perfect. I mean, you can give yourself a few years and then later on you can go expand on your own thing, but you gotta have the basic. And if you look at Chinese Kung Fu, it's the same thing. And that's what I want to say. So I said to Rick, it's not your fault too. Maybe I should have come down and watch you. So what I did was I said, I'll come down and I'll train with you guys and I'll tell you if you're doing it wrong. And how long did I stay with you guys, training you guys to do the basics? And
too long.
It didn't take too long.
He worked the hell out of us over and over and over. Repetition.
But it caught on, and he's passed on the same thing to his son, and they all look perfect. I have to say that. I have to put that out there.
Well, thank you, Carlos.
You're welcome.
All the years he was with me, he never told me my form. Only once you told me my form looked good. I think I was doing form number 5.
Okay, that's
well, again, I want to thank you both for coming out. I had a great time. And then I know we get busy, but if you ever have time in the future, you want to come back on, I'd love to have you on and talk some more story. For those of you watching this episode of Social Gelo with Angelo Podcast, I want to thank the viewers for checking out the show. One of these episodes once a week about martial arts. I'm a Kajukenbo guy, so I do talk a lot about Kajukenbo, but I also cover other martial arts as well. So stay tuned for more episodes, and have a great week. Catch y'all next time.